Hello, and welcome to the Productive on Purpose podcast. Are you a high-achieving woman of color who struggles with imposter syndrome, procrastination, and self-sabotage? Are you tired of going to bed each night hoping that tomorrow will be a better day, only for it to be more of the same? Are you sick of empty affirmations that make you feel good but don't actually lead to change? And are you over being shamed and yelled at to do the work with no insight as to how to get it done? If you answered yes to any of these questions, then friends, you are in the right place. I am your host, Dr. Kimmy, an award-winning, board-certified physician and professor. I am also your purpose coach. Here on the POP Podcast, we are about actual transformation. This podcast will provide actionable strategies to help you walk in your purpose. Let's get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. I'm so excited today to have a guest on our show. And so I'm going to go ahead and read her bio, and then we will get started. So my guest today is Carla George, and Carla is your purpose pusher, and she is determined to push women of purpose beyond their challenges and into a life of purpose. A native of Bermuda, Carla is focused on encouraging women to pursue their purpose in your career, relationship, and spiritual life. How does she do that? Well, through her book, speaking engagements, being the curator of the Date Night series, her podcast, Pushed into Purpose podcast, and the launch 2020 Pushed into Purpose Summit. Currently, Carla is running her Pushed into Purpose 7-week accelerator course, which is a step-by-step guide to help you launch your ideas into your purpose platform. Carla focuses on sharing not only her expertise and skill sets, but those of her mentors and experts who have pushed her to live on purpose and be intentional about showing up as her best self every day. She and her husband of 4 years, a gift from God, Marcus, aka DJ Chubb, George, reside in Bermuda with their boxer dog Cafe, but are citizens of the world with their love for travel and people. Welcome to the Productive on Purpose podcast, Carla.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kimmy. It's always weird hearing your bio.
I know, I hear you. I feel the same way. But you're amazing. You're doing amazing things. So I wanted to let everyone know about that. So we are going to get started. I'm just going to ask you 5 rapid fire questions. So just think the first thing that comes to your mind. So try not to overthink it too much, and then we will get started. Okay, so question number 1. What did you have for breakfast this morning?
I haven't eaten breakfast this morning.
Okay. Are you doing like intermittent fasting or anything like that?
I'm actually fasting today. So yeah, I won't be eating until 6 o'clock.
Got it. Okay. Got it. What was the last book you read?
The last book, wow, that's such a hard question because I've been reading, I don't know if you're one of those people who read like 3 books at the same time, but
that's me. That's me.
Okay.
That's me.
But, I'm excited to say that I finally finished reading the Bible in full like 2 weeks ago.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
Yes, so I'm really excited about that. It took me longer than I had expected, but my goal was to finish it. So 2 weeks ago, I finished reading the Bible.
That's great. And when did you start that journey?
About 1.5 years ago.
Got it. That's awesome though. Good for you. Kudos. All right. Question number 3. Would you rather be a spider or an ant, and why?
Oh, wow.
I know, right?
Get on my nerves. I mean, I would say an ant because they are workers and, they form community, etc. But I just really don't like them. Like, it's one of my biggest irritations in life are ants.
I know.
We have them in Bermuda. So that's a difficult question. But I guess I'll go with the ant because it does form community. They do work hard, and that's reflective of who I am.
Got it. That's also my answer, and it's because of the community. But you're right. I really can't stand ants. So.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I must irritate people sometimes.
All right, question number 4. And I don't know how this is going in Bermuda, so I'll probably ask you about that later. But here in America, we still have like a big COVID situation. So most of us are still doing like shelter in place. So my question is, after shelter in place is over, like let's say we have a vaccine and it's truly safe to travel, where is the first place you're going?
First place I want to travel to is Barcelona. Um, we were scheduled to go there twice this year, and
Oh,
we had to cancel those plans. And it's our favorite place. My husband and I is one of our favorite places to visit. So
got
I'm
it.
definitely going to Barcelona.
Got it. Love it. Love it. Okay. And then the last question is, what is the one thing in your purse that someone else would say is non-essential, but that you cannot live without?
Definitely my shades.
Okay.
Yes, my eyes are very sensitive to the light. So if I don't wear my glasses, I have to have my shades on. So I have many pairs of shades.
Got it. Got
Should
it.
be the purse, the car, the house, somewhere they're around me.
Got it. Love it. Love it. Well, welcome again. So I first got introduced to your podcast through your Instagram page. So I regularly search for hashtags that include the word purpose in it because it's something I'm really passionate about. And I came across your page and I was just like, oh, there's someone else who's talking about purpose. And she's a Black woman. I need to figure out who she is. And that's when I started listening. And I just really love your authenticity and your just genuine spirit. You're a woman of God. And I was just drawn to you at that point. So I just wanted to say thank you for doing what you're doing and for putting your stuff out there into the world because it's been really impactful for me.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much. That's so kind of you to say. Thank you.
Not a problem. So let's go ahead. I want to introduce my community to you. And I think a lot of when we talk about purpose, a lot of it is shaped in our story, right? So let's go back to the beginning. So what did little Carla want to be when she grew up?
Well, little Carla wanted to be a lawyer, and big Carla became a lawyer.
Yes, yes.
So I don't know. I don't know if it was something that was natural to me, or your parents were just subliminally telling you what to do by putting these TV shows on. But I was drawn to the law, and it was something that I had always said I wanted to do and wanted to be. But I was one of those persons who, whatever I wanted to do, I went for it and I accomplished it.
Got
And
it.
I would find a way to do it from a young child, right?
Uh-huh.
And my parents really didn't worry about me when it came to schoolwork, when it came to pursuing different, I guess, activities. They just knew that I would go ahead and do it once I had made my mind up about doing it. So
Got
that
it.
was who little Carla wanted to be, and that's who she became.
Yeah. Yeah. So it was always in the past. So were there any little areas where like your entrepreneurial spirit kind of shone through, even though you were on the path to becoming a lawyer?
Yeah, I mean, it came through in many ways.
Hmm.
And, in hindsight, it was one of those things that I wish I kind of would have nurtured earlier on and
Yeah.
had shifted my focus. And why I truly believe that it's great to have a goal and great to have these ideas of who we want to be. I think it's just equally important to explore other areas, right? Because we never know where we may be gifted in and where we may find our happiness. So it's one thing to have a job and a career is another thing to really enjoy what you do, right?
Right.
So as I remember in school, I was so funny. I was telling my husband the other day that when I went to a camp in Canada when I was about 10, 11,
Uh-huh.
my parents sent my brother and I off to this camp, and it was a whole bunch of us that went. And we learned different skill sets. So one thing we learned to do was to make like these friendship bracelets with colorful strings. And I came back to Bermuda, and once I started back at school, I started selling these friendship bracelets. So I was making them and I taught other people how to make them. I set up a little company and people signing contracts to join the company. And it was crazy. This is like at 10, 11 years old. And we were making money. We were selling them for like $3, $5, depending on what you wanted. And so
Wow.
that was like one of the starts. But we started doing many different businesses. Me and my friends in school. One At one point, we were sewing outfits for people. Uh, then I was collecting golf balls off the golf course and filling up tennis containers and selling them to my father and his friends. So yeah, it was just different things.
Wow. So you were clearly an entrepreneur from the beginning, but I love that there was a little bit of lawyer in there too, because you made them sign a contract.
I knew what was about to happen. I'm like, no, you're not taking my idea. We're signing the contract. Like, I had a non-compete clause.
That is hilarious. That's hilarious. I love it. So then tell me, what type of law, I guess after college and after you went to law school, what was your initial path?
Yeah, so my initial path was to go into family law. So I wanted to handle like divorces and deal with disputes concerning children, etc. But when I returned home, I found that the demand was in corporate law. So I eventually just journeyed into corporate law. Not saying that I enjoyed it as much, but it was a job. It paid the bills. It did what I had to do at that time.
Got it. So how long were you working in corporate law before you sort of pivoted and started with the entrepreneurial endeavors?
So I was practicing for 10 years with a firm. And after 10 years, I decided to take another route. And I actually still have a 9 to 5. So I am in insurance where I'm able to use my skill sets there, but in a different way. And in addition to that, having this job allows me to venture into the things that are near and dear to my heart. And then I feel that I'm purposed to do. So I'm able to have my podcast, and I wrote a book, have my summit, all these sorts of things, which I feel bring me true joy,
Mm-hmm.
and God has led me into.
Got it. So the podcast started, I believe, last year, and was it August of 2019?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So tell me about the initial idea for Pushed into Purpose. Where did it come from? And where did this idea of doing a podcast specifically on purpose, like where was that birthed from?
So it had to do a lot of my journey into becoming a lawyer and transitioning from that. So what I learned is that us as women who are intentional and go-getters and just want to be successful, we tend to lie or rely on our titles and our labels as our identity, right?
Mhm.
And one thing I had learned was, being called to the bar in my 20s, I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, living up to the expectations of what I thought my parents wanted me to do. I quickly learned that it didn't matter when you didn't have certain titles, such as being a wife or being a mother. So here I am in like my late 30s, and people still questioning me, why aren't you married? Why don't you have children? What is the matter with you? And I was like, you know what? It doesn't matter what you do. If you're not doing what God has purposed you to do, you're always going to try to live up to other people's expectations, and you're never going to meet them. So I just got to this point in my life where I wanted to discover who I was in Christ and how was my life aligning with what God had purposed for me. And I figured that if I was unhappy in my current state, I needed to change that, and only I could change. So I figured that no matter how we try to attain success, in quotes, we would never be fully successful if we are not enjoying what it is that we're doing. We can never meet people's expectations. So we have to make that decision of how are we going to live our life to the best of our ability and to the point where we are aligned with what God has purposed for us. So I went on this journey on just discovering who I was and just pursuing the things that will bring me joy, to keep it as simple as possible. But that came along with me doing things that were completely outside of the box for me. And what I realized is that those things that I had accomplished, God had basically pushed me into those areas. So I would do it, but with a lot of hesitation. I would be doing it scared. But God was like, no, this is what I want you to do. So if you don't move, I'm going to move you.
Ah.
Yeah. So this is how I came to the podcast, which is Pushed into Purpose, because I feel that a lot of women are sitting on gifts that they are scared to pursue for various reasons. they would change who they are as far as their titles and their labels. They would cause them to drop those titles. You no longer depend, or no people will no longer depend on you for being mommy on a day-to-day basis or being the manager. You have to rely on yourself and you have to exercise those gifts in your own power. So I also learned that throughout my journey, I was meeting women who were saying to me, I don't even know what my purpose is. And this is like at the age of 40 plus, 50,
Right.
60s. And that just weighed heavily on my heart because I was like, wow, people have been around for years and not truly living in the God given purpose. So I made it my mission to just really talk about this area and just provide different tools and resources and guide people through the word of God and how they can pursue their purpose and do it boldly.
Right. I love that. I love the first part of what you said, that and really the titles and everything, you'll just keep going after the next title and the next title and the next title if you don't become comfortable in knowing your own internal self-worth and that your self-worth comes from God over and above any of the titles that you may have. So I love that. And I love how you said that sometimes you do have to really be pushed
Yeah.
into your purpose. I love that. So, talk to us about the initial steps with setting up the podcast. And I say that because there's a lot of women in my community who would want to do something like that and are probably feeling, I tend to have women in my community who self-sabotage and they deal with a lot of things like procrastination. How did you kind of overcome any, self-doubt or imposter syndrome and literally like push yourself into this role of being a podcaster?
Yeah. So part of that was knowing who I was or who I am. So I am one who procrastinates. And
Oh, so we get to talk about that then.
and I'm a part of that, imposter syndrome community.
hmm
And so, with knowing that, what I did, I sought out a coach to guide me and keep me accountable into launching the podcast. So, Nicaila Matthews, who has the podcast Side Hustle Pro,
Love her.
I joined. Well, I love her too. I joined her group, and she basically just walks you step by step and what you need, the equipment you need, honing in on your message, making sure that you have enough content. And going through that program really helped me accountable to ensuring that I actually launched the podcast and kept it going.
I love that. I think, sometimes we as women, we want to say that, and we're strong and we're incredible and we can do so many things. But I think it's okay to say, I do need accountability. I always tell my community that when we were young, when we were growing up as kids, there was someone to hold us accountable to make sure we like brushed our teeth and took a shower. Right. So
Right.
I'm not sure, like for some reason, accountability gets a little bit of a bad rap nowadays, but it's okay to say, I need a coach. I need someone to kind of, hold me to certain milestones to make sure that I'm, making it to the next level. So I love that. So I guess as we're talking about your podcast, Pushed into Purpose, can you tell me what is your definition of purpose? And what do you think is the biggest misconception that people have about purpose?
So the biggest misconception that people have about purpose is that they have to find a purpose. So
hmm
when people say, I don't know what my purpose is, I'm trying to find my purpose, then it's actually already within you. It's really a matter of
Yes.
us discovering our purpose and just honing into those things that come natural to us and easy to us. So purpose is, if I had to define it, purpose is not what we do, but it is who we are that enhances and supports what we do. So once we get away from the doing factor, we're human beings out here doing a lot, but then you get to question, well, who is a human that I'm actually being? Right. So we bypass those simple character traits like us being giving, or we're helpers, we're loving, we're joyful. These are the things that come natural to us that would enhance those things that we do. So what we do changes from time to time, right? We don't stay in the same, well, most people don't stay in the same career for all their life. Or if you have children, at some point you're going to become an empty nester. Depending as far as your parental life goes, as far as you being a child and then turning into a caregiver for your parents, those titles change, right? So we have to recognize that those things that we do will change over time. It is inevitable. We can't escape it. But who we are, that essentially remains the same or evolves over time. We grow those different things, that those character traits that we are. And I like to call those things about how we are made in the image and the likeness of God, right? So that's where we start. That's our base. I encourage people to really assess their core values, right?
Mhm.
What is your core value? What are your non-negotiables? What causes do you support? When was the last time that you were proud of yourself? Once we're able to identify those things, then we tend to stray away from our purpose. We had that home base, which are our core values that we could always come back to. So we would
Mhm.
never stray too far once we recognize that, you know what, this is not aligning with my values and I could no longer be in this area. And that's one thing I found when I kind of shifted away from the legal fraternity. I just felt I was no longer aligned with it, no longer aligned with who I was at my core. And so I had to go into an area where I felt more aligned with my core values as far as, community, integrity, and love, and, all these sorts of things. So once you identify that, it becomes easier to be grounded and you can become centered when you find yourself straying away. So, again, purpose is not what we do, but it's who we are that enhances and supports what we do.
I love that. You said something about, I want you to say it again because it was so impactful that like I need people to not miss it. You said, tell me, run that back again when you said about human beings.
Oh, right. Yes. So, we are humans doing a lot of things, but we never question who are the humans that we are being. We're human beings, but who are we being?
Yeah.
Can, can you identify that on a day to day basis? And do you show up as her every single day?
Yeah. Okay, Pop Squad, you're going to have to probably listen to this episode twice to just really kind of like get that. That is good. That is really good. And it's so true. Why do you think, just from the work you've done with women, especially in your accelerator that we'll talk more about that in a second, but why do you think that people make purpose so elusive? Like, why does it become this elusive thing that people feel like they have to find? Why do you think they do that? I have my thoughts on that. I think part of it is like a trauma response. I think part of it is a little bit of self-sabotage in and of itself. But like, what has your experience been working with women?
Yeah, that's it. It all goes back to our surroundings and our environment and how we're
Mhm.
raised. And, as a child, we are fearless.
Yes.
Ages like 1 to 5, you couldn't tell us much. You're like, I'm going to jump off this bed and whatever. I don't care what happens, right?
Exactly.
And, but of course, we're influenced by different factors. So people project their fears on us just because of things that they have been through. Society projects different things upon us. And then we end up choosing the things that we believe, right? So, over time, we just become warped about who we really are. We tend to lose our identity along the way. I talked earlier about meeting people's expectations, meeting the expectations of society, who we should be and what we should be doing, the things that we should have. All these different things play a factor into us defining our purpose or discovering our purpose because we tend to stray away from it, leaning into what societal expectations are of us. I think we overcomplicate it. It's actually a
Yep,
lot simpler than we think.
it is.
It's within you, it's already there. And I think along the way, we get glimpses into it, but we are afraid to pursue it because it doesn't meet the expectations of what
Mhm.
society says that we should do or who we should be. So I don't think it's really any fault of our own, but it's one of those things that once we recognize that it's a lot more simpler than we think, then it's for us to pursue it and to grab onto it and take a hold of it and then just journey along to just take the journey, sorry, to grow and evolve in our purpose.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, sometimes what I've found as well is that we think that things that come easy to us, that we then can't walk in that. Like we feel like it has to be a struggle. It has to be something, it has to be
Yes.
harder than that. Have you found
Yes.
that as well?
Oh my goodness, yes. I was speaking about this the other day, how we take for granted the things that come easy to us.
Mhm.
We think that they are insignificant because we think that it's something that we just do. It's like I show up every day, this is what I do, not realizing what you do easily is not necessarily easy for somebody else. And we are missing an opportunity to actually add value to someone and create impact in somebody else's life because we just dismiss that thing that comes so easy to us. And when you think about it, if it's easy to you, it'll be easy for you to teach somebody else or to add value or create impact, right? So we always think that our platform or our purpose platform needs to be this grandiose thing. We need to be the Oprahs and the Obamas of the world, Beyonces of the world. And it's like if we're not doing that, if we don't have like 1 million followers on Instagram, then we
Mm.
aren't doing anything. And it's actually one of those things like, no, when you look at the algorithms and when you look at the stats, Beyonce's stats actually will equal up to yours when you see how many people are actually liking her posts compared to how many followers she has. The percentages are the same if you have 1,000 followers, right?
Yes.
So, you really have, it's really all about perception. And I believe that perception is reality, and it's up to us to create our own reality by changing our perception on things. So once we say, you know what, I, it's easy for me to speak to people in different crowds and settings and teach. So let me pursue that. And I could just have my purpose evolve in those different areas. So like for me, one thing I have learned is that our purpose is layered. So it started with me writing my book, The Proverbs 31 Woman More Than the Good Wife. That's where it started. And I thought that's where it was going to end. But then I launched the podcast and then I launched the summit. And now I have my accelerator program. So your purpose becomes layered as you get more involved in it and you start to hone that skill. So yeah, we need to just make it a lot more simpler than we actually perceive it to be.
Yes. And just take that messy first step, right? Because sometimes when you take that first step, God's plan and his purpose is going to be revealed in our lives. That's what I always say. So, like you said, you didn't know you would start, when you started out, you didn't necessarily know that you would end up with an accelerator and even a podcast, but you took that first step of writing the book. So let's talk about the book. Can you tell the community a little bit about your book and who is it for? Who should read your book?
Sure. The book is called Proverbs 31 Woman More Than the Good Wife. And by the title, you would think this is for women. It is, but if we know about the Proverbs 31 woman, it was actually a letter written by the queen to her son, said to be King Solomon. And she told him the type of woman that he should look for as when he's looking to be married and take on a wife. So man can also benefit from this book if you're looking for that special woman, if you want to know how to treat her. The book can also help you in that way. But it really reflects on who we are again in the image of God. So God created us and we are made in his image and his likeness. And God has stated that he is the great I am. And since we are created in his image, he has empowered us to declare who we are each and every day.
Mhm.
So each chapter of the book is a declaration of I am. And I go through the verses pertaining to the Proverbs 31 woman. And if you read about her, we find that she is an entrepreneur. She's a change agent. She is well known in her community. She
She's a
gives back to her.
boss.
She
Mhm.
is a boss, okay? Yes, that is it. She is a boss. And so outside of being a wife, she is all these amazing things. So when I was starting to write the book, I actually wasn't married. And when I first learned about the Proverbs 31 woman, it was when I was a child, but maybe in my teenage years. And I always just knew her to be this wife who was submissive and a woman who was pious and just did what she was supposed to do. But once I started to learn about her for myself, I was like, man, she is a wife. But before she was a wife, she was a boss. She was found in this state. She didn't
Mhm.
become this way after she got married. And that gave me hope to encourage myself and then encourage other women, especially single women, to say, you know what? Being married is not the be all and end all. It is okay if you're not. And while you're not, or even if you are, you can be all these wonderful, amazing things. So we can be change agents, we can be entrepreneurs, we can be real estate agents, and we can make a difference in our community as well.
Yes, that's amazing. That's so dope. So, there's a lot of ups and downs along this journey of podcasting and then taking it to the next level by monetizing your podcast. So, what would you say has been like the highest high, like the biggest up that you had? And what have been some of the challenges that you faced along the way? And how have you been able to overcome those?
Right. So I'll start with the challenges first. I think the challenges have been keeping up and just, keeping that same energy that you had when you first started, just continue to be enthusiastic. So my podcast, now I say my podcast launches every Monday-ish, because sometimes, to be honest, Dr. King, I'm just not feeling it,
I feel you.
And I just had to say, you know what, it's okay, Carla. You don't have to show up at your absolute highest every single day. You are allowed to take a break, and you are allowed to just become, exercise, self-care in the way that you find best to do that. So I think those become my challenging times. I do, get concerned, like, okay, if I don't put out an episode this week, am I disappointing my audience? Am I going to lose my following? All these sorts of things. But one thing I've learned is that, when people are supporting you, they're going to support you no matter what, through the ups and through the downs. So I'm happy to say that I have like over 5,700 downloads since inception, which was
Congratulations.
thank you. So, it just lets me know that the message about purpose, as you know, Dr. Kimi, is needed for this time. So one of my greatest high moments, I think, would be when I took the podcast and extended it into the summit. And that was an opportunity for my community to connect in a virtual setting and for us to have like real time interaction. Because one thing is great about the podcast, you're talking about, you don't really get that instant reaction, right? So I found that I was missing that in my community. So I wanted to create a space where we can interact, and I brought on different guests, and it was like a teacher moment. It was wonderful. The ladies showed up every day. They would sign on for 3 days and learn about their purpose in their relationships, their career, and their faith.
That is amazing. I was going to ask you about the summit nest, just how that came about. But I hear you, because you're literally just talking into a mic. Right? And so,
Like, out there.
and that there's people listening because you see the downloads, and you see all of that. But I love the fact that you gathered your community together and you said, let's do, something where I can really get that interaction and that engagement. Because I hear you. Podcasting, it can be a little, and that's how I started. I mostly do a solo podcast, but recently I've been inviting guests because it's been beautiful just being able to have these conversations, because most of the time it's just me talking to myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. You get to learn so many different things, and you get to meet some wonderful people.
Yes.
This has now become another avenue for my tribe and my community. Like, I'm meeting people from all over the place, and they're meeting me. And, we have so much in common. We may not be in the same country, and may not have the same background, but we realize that we do have quite a lot in common. So it's been great to meet so many different people through this platform.
100%. So tell us, the Pop Squad, about your accelerator. So walk us through like just kind of the big picture of what your accelerator would be teaching, and sort of what benefits they would get if they were to join your accelerator program.
All right. So the accelerator program is called the Pushed into Purpose 7-week accelerator course. And 7 is intentional because, well, first, it's based on the word purpose, which is 7 letters. And each week we deal with a letter of the word purpose.
Okay.
And then also 7 is the number of completion. So the intention is that if you have an idea, if you have a vision that God has downloaded into your spirit, but you are sitting on that and you no longer want to sit on it, you want to pursue it, this course is meant for you to have a strategy so that you can execute your idea and create your own purpose platform. So we go for 7 weeks and we deal with things like purposeful prayer and affirmation. We deal with understanding our gifts and the value that we bring. We recognize the resources that we may need, because even though we may have an idea, part of not executing is not knowing how to do it because you don't know where to start. So if you want to have a podcast, you may not even know that you need to download certain platforms in order to start the podcast and get certain equipment, right? So we deal with different resources depending on your expertise or the area you choose to go in. And then we would deal with planning out your strategy. So we have a strategy for your launch. So we will set a launch date and how we go about advertising. Again, reaching out to different resources, ensuring that we have everything to perfect our launch. And then we'll overcome obstacles, because whenever you start something, of course, the enemy of doubt and insecurity and imposter syndrome is going to kick in. And then there will just be other obstacles that come along the way. So I know, launching a podcast, you can have some difficulty in like just downloading the episode into Libsyn and having it pop up on Apple or something. So, we will deal with overcoming different obstacles. And then we will set a purpose platform date and make sure that the word gets out, because it doesn't make sense having this great idea and nobody knows about it. And then finally, we will execute the purpose platform. So it's really a program that creates, again, community. So I have a cohort right now. We have a cohort going on, and we just started this week going through the process, and the cohort is able to be in a group and encourage each other through their journey. They also provide different resources and expertise that I may not necessarily have. The group also we have calls, 2 calls during the course, and then they have one-on-one calls with myself. And then there's a workbook where you will have homework, because yes, we want to make sure that you are held accountable to what you said you're going to do. And in addition to that, you'll get to see the progress you make along the way.
That's wonderful. And would you say in terms of the type of business or the type of purpose platform that someone would want to start, is it all encompassing, or is it specifically for those who want to start a podcast?
Oh, no, it's all encompassing. So I was just giving that example of
Got it.
But if you want to write a book, some people in my class are teachers and they want to have a mentoring program. They want to basically branch off from what they do on their day-to-day and bring a small group together. I have another lady who has a Bible study group, and she just wants to know how to develop that even further and have more of a reach. And then somebody else who is into baking, and she wants to hold events and just expand her business. So it varies the ideas that you have or the visions that you have. I just basically give you the tools and the strategy and the resources so that you can launch.
Okay, great. So Pop Squad, you hear that it's not just for podcasters. Any type of idea or something that you might be sitting on, this particular course may be for you. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that to the community. I do think that, like I said earlier, sometimes we just need that accountability, that community, someone to kind of hold us accountable, but also hold our hand through the process. So I love that. So what is next for the Push into Purpose podcast? What is next for Carla? And then do you have any just like parting words for the community?
I don't know what's next, to be honest.
I love that answer. I love the honesty.
To be honest, Dr. Kim, I'm really trying to pull back a little bit, because I've been doing a lot in the last 2 to 3 years. And I really am just trying to concentrate and pour as much into my podcast, into my clients who join my course. And that's where I really am focusing right now, trying to pull back from all these ideas that kind of get downloaded. But that's my area. I've enjoyed the summit. So if anything, I will be doing another summit. But outside of that, I'm really just pouring into my community via the podcast and via my course.
I love that. I love that you're just like, I don't know. And that's the thing, like God will download something into your future, but you're just like, I'm just going to trust and just work on what I'm doing now. And then the next steps will come. I love that. I love that. Do you have any parting words of advice for the community? Any last words you want to share? And then where can my community find you?
Sure. I just want to encourage your women of success to continue doing what you're doing, and just push forward into the area that you feel God is calling you into. It could be difficult to stray away from what you're used to, but trust me, once you find your journey and your purpose, you will see that this is where you're meant to be all of this time. It's going to be such a revelation for you. You can definitely find me on Instagram, Dr. Kimmy. I'm at Push Into Purpose Podcast on Instagram. And my website is I am Carla George. And then if you want to purchase my book, it is on Amazon, Proverbs 31 Woman, More Than the Good Wife, and my podcast, Pushed Into Purpose Podcast, which can be found on all platforms.
Awesome. And squad, I'll have all the links to all of this in the show notes. So you'll be able to just click and go right to the locations that Carla mentioned. Well, Carla, thank you so much again for being on the podcast and just sharing your story. I feel really inspired to continue along my journey and to continue walking in my purpose. So thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate this.
Thank you for listening to the Productive on Purpose podcast. Now, take the next step. Head on over to www.productivepurpose.com to download your free Planning for Procrastinators workbook. It's time to start walking in our purpose, y'all. I'll catch you on the next episode.